Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you again to another edition of Renew Education. This is the May edition, and we are going to be discussing artificial intelligence and energy efficiency. So please, wherever you're joining us from, you can share with us in the chat box. Please provide your name and the country or the region where you're joining us from. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Shalom Chilar Ibo. I'm the founder of Renew Arts Technologies. It's an organization that is focused on providing climate change awareness and renewable energy education. And we, as well as designing technologies that will accelerate energy access for people at the grassroots level. We've been doing this particular program, Renew Education, for since last year, and we've been privileged to have distinguished speakers, even including the former Secretary of the United States Department of Energy here with us. So not to take us too far in the introductions, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our distinguished speaker today, and he's going to go on to give his presentation. And please, once again, we are all welcome. Share your name and where you're joining us from in the chat. Thank you. All right. It's a privilege and my honor to have with us Dave Turk. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him because his bio is so extensive, and then he's going to go on to give us more details. Dr. Dave is, like I fondly call him, is a distinguished visiting fellow at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia University. He previously served as Deputy Secretary of the United States Department of Energy from March 2021 to January 2025. And as the Deputy Secretary, he served as the number 2 official and Chief Operating Officer of a $50 billion per year organization focused on all things energy, basic science, and nuclear security. Prior to his nomination as Deputy Secretary, Tuck was the Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, where he focused on helping countries around the world to make progress on their clean energy transitions. He coordinated with all 31 IEA member countries, various other country partners, and a wide variety of companies, investors, and NGOs. He has been a special assistant to the president and senior director at the United States National Security Council, deputy special envoy for climate change at the State Department, and a staff director of the National Security Subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee. Turk was born in Quito, Ecuador, and raised in Rock Falls, Illinois. He is a graduate of both the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and the University of Virginia Law School. He and his wife, Emily Turk, have 3 children. Please join me with a round of emojis and firesides emojis in the chat box as we welcome Dr. Talk to take his presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks very much, Shalom, for the introduction and for hosting this webinar. And it's just great to be with you all. And what I thought I might do is just speak for a few minutes just to kind of frame out 3 parts, and then eager and happy to take any questions and have a good discussion with you all. And I know Shalom has some prepared questions as well. First part I'll get into is just a bit of a smattering of the benefits of AI, especially across energy, but even beyond, with a focus on ways that it can help us reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also how it can improve lives, not just the lives of those who are wealthiest in the world, but how it can improve the lives of all of us around the world, and make things not only more efficient. As we'll get into, there's incremental benefits from AI technology in a whole wide range of sectors, but there's also some transformational opportunities as well. So we'll give you a bit of a flavor of that. Second part of my brief framing remarks up front, we'll talk about some of the barriers to artificial intelligence. What are some of the challenges of getting those benefits, especially benefits shared widely all across the world. And then the third part is just to give you a feel for some of the risks. As with any powerful technology, there's a lot of upside potential, but there are also risks and challenges that need to be managed by governments, by others as well. And at least from my perspective, give you a flavor for what some of those risks are and how to think about guardrails and other ways to maximize the positives and then to minimize the risks. So if that sounds good, we'll just get into the framing. I don't have slides. I'm just going to talk, and I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief. I'll also highlight a few documents, reports, analysis that I found quite helpful in this area in case folks want to really delve into a great amount of detail. All right, so let me start with the benefits of artificial intelligence. I think we've all seen some of those reported. We're starting to see some of those in the real world. Um, there's a really good compilation I've found. I think it's the best compilation that I've seen about the benefits of AI. It's in a report. I'll show it on the screen, and maybe Shalom, we can provide the link for this, although I'm sure you can Google it as well. I guess my screen is there we go. It's something that was put together. It's called Artificial Intelligence for Climate Change Mitigation Roadmap, November 2024. It's the second edition of that report. It was something that a colleague of mine compiled, David Sandalo, who's also a fellow, also affiliated with Columbia University's Global Energy Center. And David's been focused on this issue for quite a few years. He actually has a podcast now that you can find as well on artificial intelligence if you prefer and enjoy podcast formats. But what David did is he talked to experts across a whole wide variety of different sectors about what's happening in those sectors with artificial intelligence and some of the, again, incremental but also transformative ways that artificial intelligence can help. It ends up being a pretty lengthy report, covers a whole wide range of subject matter, about 338 pages, and a lot of good granularity in there. Let me just pick out a few sectors and a few specific examples in that. Certainly the power sector, electricity. There's a lot of benefits artificial intelligence is already having in the power sector. One area that's been focused on quite a bit is as we have more and more renewables in the system, as we have more solar, as we have more wind. Of course, these are intermittent sources of power. They're not 24/7 baseload power. It makes it a little bit more complicated to balance the grids between supply and demand, especially as you have more and more renewables into the system. And maybe even more complicated the more you have distributed renewables in the system. So instead of just big utility scale solar, you have a lot of solar that folks have on their roofs or in their yards. How do you balance all of that? Artificial intelligence is already proving to be a very useful tool in a lot of countries to balance the grids and make sure that we're getting the most out of the existing assets and resources that we have. Instead of building more transmission in a country that has a lot of transmission like the United States, what we're finding is artificial intelligence allows us to use our electricity assets a lot more efficiently, to take advantage of uh, demand response, smart demand response, aggregating a variety of users, smart refrigerators, smart plug-in appliances more generally. Another example in the electricity sector, which I think is a really interesting one, it's an area that we worked at when I was with the U.S. Department of Energy, and that is how can you use AI to help speed up the permitting process? Permitting in my country, in the United States, takes a long time, especially for electricity assets and maybe even more so for transmission. We had a program we did with some of our national labs to digitize a lot of the previous applications, environmental applications in particular, for permitting. If you put all that in digitized form and you use AI technologies, you can actually speed up that next permitting application. So instead of people having to start from scratch, they could look through a whole database of previous permits, and a lot of these permits are literally hundreds and hundreds of pages and quite complicated. Using AI tools and technologies, you can try to streamline that learning process. So instead of starting from scratch, you already start with a relatively decent permitting application that, of course, humans need to look over, work through, adapt for the particular application. But we found that that was able to speed up the permitting process pretty significantly. So a couple examples in the power sector. Another area that this compilation report gets into is food system. An important part, of course, for countries all over the world. Again, we want to be efficient with our resources. We want to be efficient with our fertilizer. We want to be efficient with our water use. We want to be efficient with our seeds. And what AI allows us to do is have remote sensing for agriculture to monetize, to optimize management decisions, to accelerate breeding programs. So instead of just trial and error in the real world, we can use AI to speed up that innovation to make sure that we're getting the types of crops, the genetic varieties of crops that are going to be most adapted to a particular area. I think incredibly important is we not only have to do that as quickly as possible, again, to be efficient with how we feed all of us, all of the world's people. But we're also seeing climate change make changes to what types of crops in what areas and what types of particular strains of crops make the most sense in this area versus this area versus this area. So instead of doing that generically across wider geographic bands, it allows you to target and be much more efficient with the kind of extensive data and information that we've got. A third area that's already seen quite a bit of artificial intelligence is manufacturing, a whole variety of different manufacturing sectors. One way in which that plays out is a whole slew of efficiency gains through the use of what's called digital twins. So instead of making changes haphazardly or even informed in your manufacturing process, think of a steel plant, think of a cement plant. What you can do is have a digital twin that tries to encompass as many of the characteristics as possible of that real world manufacturing facility. And then when you have a digital twin, it's a lot easier to make tweaks to it and to see what's going to be more efficient, what's going to use less energy inputs, what's going to provide more outputs going forward. And we've seen that applied in a whole variety of manufacturing processes. One area where we've seen some particular benefits is in steel making and electric arc furnaces in particular that uses scrap steel, scrap metal instead of coal. And what we've seen in one example, a Brazilian steel manufacturer achieved an 8% reduction in alloy additive consumption using AI, which reduces the costs, also reduces the emissions, and has some pretty significant climate mitigation benefits as well. And you can think about that digital twin model all across a wide variety of manufacturing facilities. Road transportation is, of course, another application. In the United States, it's actually the largest segment of our emissions is road transportation. Think not only, of course, passenger vehicles, but heavy duty freight, air, marine, everything that moves both people and goods along those fronts. We're starting to see a lot of AI being used for siting electric chargers in our country and other countries. So really using AI tools, using data sets to make sure that when we site EV chargers, they're done in the most optimally efficient kind of way. They're done in a way that reduces range anxiety and again makes sure that we can take most advantage of the resources that we've got. Aviation has seen some really interesting examples of AI. One particular example that may not come to mind immediately is when aircraft fly around the world, depending on the particular atmospheric conditions, they can produce condensation trails. Think contrails is the term that's most commonly used. That what happens is those actually have quite a significant, larger than you might expect, climate impact. Depending again on those particular atmospheric conditions, it can actually be a greenhouse gas climate change accelerant. So AI is being used to try to look at the atmospheric conditions of where the flight patterns are going to be and avoid areas where you're going to have that climate enhancing effect and try to minimize that impact. Again, it's a small example, but when you add these things up, pretty significantly impacts. There's AI being used in buildings efficiency, optimizing heating ventilation systems. Um, Obviously, that needs to be adapted and used in a variety of different contexts and conditions all around the world. Different technologies like nuclear power, not only fission, but I'd draw your attention in particular to fusion. Fusion energy has been an area that has been talked about, written about for literally decades. If we're able to crack fusion, it's a pretty significant game changer in the energy side. It doesn't have some of the same baggage, some of the environmental waste that nuclear fission has. What we're seeing right now is because of both material science, but also artificial intelligence, companies, and there's a lot more private sector actors, about $6 billion of private sector investment in fusion energy just in the United States alone. A lot of that's being advanced by the digital twins, by being able to experiment in the digital space instead of having to build a whole bunch of different iterations of nuclear fusion reactors, which would be very expensive. So we're actually seeing a lot more progress in that sector because of artificial intelligence. The one last area that I'd draw your attention to is really on the materials innovation side of things. We did a lot of this in our national labs when I was Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Energy. Think of the battery chemistries not only of today, but the battery chemistries of the future. So instead of having to experiment in all sorts of different mixes of chemistries, do you use lithium? Do you use cobalt? What ratios? How do you try to bring into it different, especially sources and materials that don't have the environmental footprint or are more common and aren't rare earths around the world? What we've seen and what we're seeing is, again, you can have that digital experimentation where you run a bunch of models, try out a bunch of materials, and then instead of having to do 200 different tests in the real world, you pick the five that are most promising, and then you run those tests. And that allows you to really shrink down that innovation cycle and hopefully get to those new materials that are useful across the board. So that's again, just a smattering, not meant to be exhaustive, but just illustrative of some of the benefits that we're seeing of AI, and you can extrapolate that going forward. All right, then the second category is what are the barriers of AI? One is AI itself, the data centers in particular, use a lot of electricity. And how much more electricity are they going to use? How much more are they going to use versus the benefits that they bring, especially if we think about the climate implications, the greenhouse gas emissions, depending on how that electricity is produced. We've had a couple pieces of analysis I want to draw your attention to in particular that actually have some good hard numbers, as much as you can, given the uncertainties involved, of how much we're currently using our electricity around the world for artificial intelligence and data centers and what we could expect into the future. Let me just give you a few pieces of that. The best global analysis is done by my former, at least from my perspective, my former employer at the International Energy Agency, IEA. You can find this free online. They put out a report, an updated report just a month ago, looking at global data center use. Of course, not all data centers right now are artificial intelligence. Most of them are a whole variety of think Netflix, think videos, think social media, but a growing percentage is artificial intelligence, especially as we go forward. Right now, data centers around the world consume about 1.5% of the world's electricity. So that's a lot, but it's not a huge amount, certainly in percentage terms, compared to everything else that we use electricity for right now. That is not evenly distributed, as you might imagine. In fact, 45% of the data centers right now around the world are actually in the United States, and a disproportionate amount of those doing artificial intelligence, especially the cutting edge training models in the US. 25% of data centers are in China and 15% of data centers are in Europe. And as I mentioned a few times on the benefits of artificial intelligence, I think it's incumbent on all of us who work in this space to make sure that the benefits of artificial intelligence, the economic opportunities, are distributed around the world so that everybody can benefit from those technologies. And the market will do what the market does. maximizing profits. And I think there's a role for governments, there's a role for foundations, there's a role for international organizations to make sure that the benefits of AI, the economic benefits, the other benefits of AI, redound across the world. Now, I mentioned the 1.5% of global electricity use for AI. What the IEA estimates is that that use is going to double just by 2030. So that gives you a sense of the increasing scale, the increasing amount of electricity um, going to use for data centers and artificial intelligence. The numbers in the United States are even more stark. The best estimate in the United States comes from one of our national labs, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Right now, they estimate about 4.4% of our electricity use in the United States goes to data centers. And they're estimating that that could be as high as 12% just by 2028. So again, that gives you a sense of the scale, how much money is being invested by the Googles, the OpenAIs, and the others, just numbers in the US. It's also true that these are increasingly large data centers, huge data centers, 1 gigawatt level data centers, which is a huge amount. 1 gigawatt's about what a major nuclear plant provides electricity for. So these are increasingly just enormous, enormous facilities. And they're chunky. They're big in one particular location, so it can be a real challenge for the particular locations in which these are sited. So that's one barrier is providing electricity. As someone who's been focused on climate change for many years, much, 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 much better for that electricity to be produced by solar, by wind, by storage, by clean sources of power. There's a particular opportunity to use data centers as a way to accelerate not only the existing clean energy technologies we have, but really to lean in on enhanced geothermal or fusion or other technologies that AI, given the deep pockets that they have, could help reduce the cost of those technologies. And that's something I've spent a decent amount of time on. A second barrier for getting the most out of artificial intelligence is data. AI depends on good data. If you don't have good data coming in, you're going to have bad analysis coming out. And so there needs to be quality control. There needs to be a whole variety of good data going in. And again, good data that's relevant globally all around the world. And so I think there's a real need, a real premium on governments around the world, societies around the world to make sure that we have good representative data. We have data not just of some parts of the world, but all around the world so that we can get the most benefits of the analysis coming out. Maybe the biggest barrier of all to AI and benefiting from AI is the personnel piece of it. AI is not self-executing, at least until AI takes over the world and makes decisions for itself. It's humans that make the decisions about what AI is used for, how it's applied, how it's targeted, what particular sectors, what particular countries, et cetera, et cetera. And so we spent a lot of time when I was at the Department of Energy thinking about training and making sure that we've got a wide variety, a diverse variety of folks with backgrounds going in and having an opportunity to study AI to be part of this cutting edge. I think we're going to get the benefits from AI, just like with data, if we have good people with diverse backgrounds, bringing their shared life, bringing their respective lived experiences in ways that can benefit communities that they're from. And so as we think about things we're advocating for from our governments, from others, let's think about making sure that we've got opportunities for everyone to benefit from learning about AI, from being at the cutting edge of AI. All right, and then the third category, real briefly, is the risks of AI. AI is an incredibly powerful technology, but there are real risks associated with it if it's not carefully managed. I had a chance to work at our national with some of our cutting edge AI experts, not only in the private sector in the US, but a lot of our national lab experts who've literally been working, some colleagues have been working on AI for 3 decades, 4 decades, right, in its nascent phases. One thing that caused me real concern is the people who know AI the most, especially if they're being honest with you, at least that I've found, are the ones that also worry a lot about the risks of AI. And it's a powerful technology. And as we've seen with other powerful technologies, there's a lot of good that can come from it. but there's a lot of bad that can come from it, in pretty significant, pretty significant kinds of ways. First area is just as AI makes it easier to do a lot of good things, it can make it easier to do a lot of bad things. So if you have AI models that really understand physics, if you have AI models that really understand biological processes, that can improve crops, that can improve manufacturing processes. It can also help terrorists develop nuclear weapons, or it can also help states develop bioweapons. The only way I think that you avoid that is you have partnerships with people who understand bioweapons, people who understand nuclear weapons, and do something called red teaming. So one thing that we advocated for, we tried to push this in the Biden administration. We'll see what the Trump administration decides to do, is before new models come out, think Chat GPT or whatever kind of versions come from that, you have to have mandatory red teaming. So instead of putting a model out there that can cause all sorts of bad things in the world, do red teaming where you have experts that are looking at that model privately before it's publicly released and doing the tests and analysis to make sure it can't inadvertently make a bioweapon or make a nuclear weapon or help someone do those bad things. And so to me, there's a need, a requirement, a moral obligation, if you will, to make sure that before things are put out, that they're checked in this kind of way. I've worked a lot with the Googles and Microsofts and OpenAIs and others of the world. There's a lot of good people who work at these companies, but they're private sector companies that in the end are after profit. There is also an intense competition for them to move very quickly to get products to market. So I personally feel like there's a very important role, a strong role for governments to play that's different than just the private sectors looking at their own interests, which is why this mandatory red teaming I think is so important. The other risk, and happy to get into any of this as folks want to, that I'd highlight for people, and we're already starting to see this in social media, is AI can be a powerful tool for disinformation, misinformation, whether inadvertent or purposeful. If you think of corporations, if you think of dictators, if you think of others misusing this technologies to help them keep power. Again, that's something that's important for people to have control of their own privacy. What information of ours goes into these AI models? Do we have control over that information, especially if you're a writer or you're an author or you're a patent or you produce patents or you should benefit from the fruits of your labor as opposed to it being put into an AI model and someone else benefiting from it. But maybe even more importantly, this is a powerful technology that can be used to put fake videos out there of political opponents that make it look like the political opponent is doing something illegal, right? Like this technology has gotten so sophisticated and powerful right now, it's very difficult to tell real life from artificial AI-induced alternate videos. So let me leave it there in the interest, Shalom, of time. And again, more than happy to answer any and all questions and just engage in a good discussion and certainly hear what other folks are thinking as well.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. It was really amazing to hear the diverse perspective, bringing it from the benefits and down to the barriers and closing up with the risks, which I know that's going to attract a lot of questions because typically that's the worry for a lot of us. How do we control AI? What are the ethical considerations and how can we protect our information as well as our just our personality and and everything that surrounds us when we use AI. And so I'll kick it off with some questions, but please, if you have questions in the audience, you can feel free to raise your hands, drop in the chat box, and while you're asking your question, feel free to turn on your camera. Let's get more interactive and engaging. And so the first question was during your presentation when you mentioned about AI, the possibility of using AI to speed up permit. And I was wondering, because you talked a lot about the risks of putting so much personal information or putting a lot of very secretive information. How can is there a control or some also sort of layer of protection on the permit information that is going into these AI models that people outside of the organization cannot access? And okay, you may take.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. It's a great question, and I think the way you asked the question is exactly the way to think about the answer for it, and that it is layered protection, right?
Oh,
There's no
okay.
silver bullet or magic way to protect folks. I think you need to have layers of protection on the privacy and the other kinds of risks to it. Um, First of all, you have to start with the data, right? It's not something that gets focused on as much as it should. Think of data. Electricity is a fuel for AI, but think of data as a fuel for AI, right? It's the important part. Nothing works unless you have information that's kind of feeding into an AI model. What you need to do is ensure that that data going in is accurate. It's not capturing private information that consumers, citizens don't want that information being shared, right? A lot of AI and social media companies right now are vacuuming up huge amounts of information. Consumers should have transparency on that. Consumers should have control over that. I don't think we currently have an effective regime to make sure that that's actually the case going in. There's been lawsuits from media organizations and others to avoid all their work product just being soaked up by AI, and then AI writing articles that cut the reporters out of their own fruits of their labor. So I think you need to focus at the first level on what kinds of information are going in, what's the regime that governs that, again, to protect people first and foremost, right? Instead of profit or other kinds of motives along those lines. And then secondly, you need to have some level of protection if a consumer, if a writer, if someone sees an AI model spitting something out that is infringing upon someone's rights or doing something that's illegal or has real social consequences associated with it. So some system to look at things as the model is working in real time to have redress to it. I mean, not just to have consumers, citizens powerless if something bad's going on.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that response. So I'll give the next question to the audience. I see Mr. Clayton's hand raised. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Shalom, and thank you, Mr. Dave, for such an insightful presentation and numbers. I was just writing all the figures, and it's so interesting. So, my question: when you actually talked about the benefits of AI, in renewables, talking about how AI can also be used to, predict usage, and it also got me thinking as someone coming from Nigeria, where electricity access, still remains a major challenge for many communities. I'm kind of curious to know, even beyond the use of AI to improve energy efficiency, how can AI be used directly to support energy access, and tackle broader issues of energy deficiency in developing countries? And are there any examples where AI has, helped optimize grid management, or maybe support of grid solutions, or maybe even predict, how energy can match in low where people cannot really afford, such. So I'm just curious to know. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Clinton. And I've had a chance to focus on my career a good bit on the energy access issue and making sure everyone benefits from affordable energy, affordable electricity all around the world. And we have issues in our country. Every country has issues, but certain countries and certain regions have bigger issues. And the hundreds of millions of folks who don't have access to even basic electricity in Africa is something that should cause us all to redouble our efforts along those lines. The short answer is I think AI can be a really powerful tool to help bring that access to electricity as quickly as possible. And to me, it's not just electricity in terms of a light bulb or a minimum amount of, to charge a phone or to have refrigeration, although refrigeration is important for medical purposes and for health purposes, et cetera, et cetera. As someone who's worked in the energy space, energy is absolutely key for economic opportunities. And so I think we need to be thinking not only of base electricity access, but providing enough electricity energy access at affordable rates so people have economic opportunities and really trying to, I guess the way to think of it is our work is never done until everybody has access to the amount of energy, affordable energy, reliable energy, and clean energy, of course, ideally as well. What we need to do to really take advantage of AI in the access context is a couple things. One is, again, it starts with data. If we don't have a focus on data and understanding where, what conditions, no AI model is going to be able to spout out anything that's useful on the back end unless we have good information on the front end. When I worked for the International Energy Agency, we spent a lot of time working with a variety of partners, including and especially in Africa, to make sure we had good access to numbers, just to know where the folks are and what are the conditions, and thinking about the most appropriate technologies to solve that problem. What we found in that analysis is a lot of the solutions, especially cost-effective solutions, especially with solar, and now we have battery technologies that are cheaper and cheaper as well as distributed solutions as opposed to building a grid everywhere all at once. That type of decentralized solutions lends itself even more towards AI technologies being able to help and be efficient along those lines. I also think it's incredibly important. Again, I think a lot of the big AI companies and those who have the AI technology will use that technology to make money where there's most money to be made. And so I think we need to be thinking about, is it the World Bank? Is it the African Development Bank? Is it other foundations? Is it entrepreneurs and having access to capital for entrepreneurs to really take full advantage of these AI tools for those areas that won't have as much profit maximization opportunities as some other areas? And again, I personally think we should be purposeful, intentional at really making sure that we're taking care of those things that won't be taken care of just with people who can afford to pay for AI to, do whatever thing that they need, but to make sure it's benefiting from everybody. So we really need to have those kinds of incentives.
Thank you so much for that response. He's applauding, so I think the question was completely answered. I do have some questions in the chat box. The first one is from Ibechuku. He's asking about battery chemistries. I believe he was referring to, when you mentioned about battery storage and how energy storage is the future. So he's wondering, like, if you can give more clarifications on the statement.
Yeah, so this is really a great example of AI's ability to help us innovate and do it quicker. And so what we're seeing in our US national labs, what we're seeing it in a variety of companies as well, is they're doing a lot of experimentation with different battery chemistries online using physics models, chemistry models that are quite sophisticated. We actually have a project that we worked with one of our national labs, Pacific Northwest National Lab with Microsoft. And Pacific Northwest National Lab has been trying a variety of different battery chemistries out, and they partnered with Microsoft on some of their cutting edge AI models to try to accelerate that process. And again, what it allows you to do is just speed up the innovation process. So instead of doing literally, in some cases, thousands and thousands of experiments where you coat different anodes with this type of material or a mix of 55% this and 45% this, is that the optimal percentage? Is that the right conditions? Or is there some other more optimal condition? What you do is you do all those experiments as much as you can incredibly quickly with AI. And then you use the AI tool to try to guide your research of what you actually try out in the real world, right? You always have to make sure your real world experiments line up with your AI models. If they don't, then your AI models are garbage and aren't any good. So you always need to calibrate how it matches up in the real world. And then you just repeat. And instead of certain experiments taking literally years and years to undertake an experiment in the real world, you can accelerate that to the point where you're doing things in a week that used to take you 2, 3 year period of time. And so battery chemistries, because there's so many different permutations of battery chemistries, is one area in particular that is really seeing some significant uptake on AI and improving a lot of the opportunity space going forward. And the important part there too is you may have certain batteries and battery chemistries that are more suitable for a hot climate versus a cold climate or a humid climate or a climate or a situation where you want to have robustness of that kind of battery not needing to be maintained in an air conditioned or climate controlled environment. You may need a battery chemistry that can deal with some places that get really hot in the day and really cold at night, or really dry or really humid. And so there's applications for particular geographic contexts that, again, experimentation through AI can help accelerate those solutions. So hopefully that's helpful to give a little bit more clarification. There's some additional examples of that in the report that I mentioned, and you should be able to find more information out about the Pacific Northwest National Lab Microsoft partnership as well, if folks are interested in learning more.
That's great. And I do agree with you, especially in terms of using AI to understand geographical positions and how that can enable more renewable, more energy access and research in terms of like battery chemistries and all of that. I do want to mention to all of our participants, we do have a survey in the chat box. Please help us to fill that so we can know what's more like what you find more interesting, and we'll try to arrange more of those programs related to that. But there are other questions here in the chat box. But before I continue, I would like to know how many questions you would like to take more, or if there's a particular number to that.
Yeah, happy to take some more questions. I've got a hard stop, I guess, in 18 minutes now, but
Okay.
happy if there are questions to try to provide whatever information that might be useful.
All right. Okay. So have 18 minutes. So the next question is about personal data. This is from Praise Farah. He asked, can personal data be completely erased from AI? He's speaking from the perspective of protecting personal information.
Yeah, it gets very challenging, especially the way these AI models work. And so the first and most important layer of protection is what information goes into those AI models. Once information goes in, especially as you do the generative AI and the AI models doing what the AI models do, it's very difficult after the fact to go in and try to extract that kind of information once it gets all mixed together, if you want to think of it in that kind of rough, rude, crude analogy. So this is why I think it's incredibly important early on to have very clear rules where consumers can protect what information goes into their social media sites that might be vacuumed up for model training purposes. Incredibly important to have copyright protections if you're an author. If a patent of yours is being soaked up into an AI model, you should benefit from that. That is something that you've put a lot of time and work into. And so we see some song makers and authors and others suing and being very upset along those lines, and making sure that, again, there's compensation for it. Big AI companies shouldn't just soak up everybody else's information and work product and then sell it to others. They didn't create that in the first place. They shouldn't benefit without also benefiting the people who produce that information as well. And certainly, all of us as consumers should have control over our information. Some people may be more comfortable with sharing that information, and if they are, then that's their choice. Others may be more cautious about doing that. And of course, we're not just thinking and worrying about uh, people making money off of our information, but I think we all need to be thinking about whether it's our own governments or other governments or others who would use that information for blackmail purposes, for shutting down dissent within countries or other kinds of things like that. So the first and most important layer of protection is to avoid that information finding its way into these models in the first place. And right now, candidly speaking, we're not doing so good on that front. We really don't have regimes in place that are as mature as the ever emerging, ever dynamic technology race that's happening.
Yes, I do agree. I do agree. And sometimes we also have fault because we do not control the level of information we put up on social media, our private life. A lot of people share too much information on that and a lot of those things. Thank you for that response. There's one reflection that I do have from the question that you from this response that you have given a lot about withholding some information that gets out there to train models. So I wanted to know, do we have regulations or what kind of ethical considerations that needs to be in place to limit and still protect information for those that are not even knowledgeable to know how to remove their information online? Do we have some set of regulations that can protect people, especially if AI is doing something more dangerous to them than helping them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And my answer here is that I think we need much more government involvement, not to stifle technologies, but it's very difficult for any consumer to go against the big AI data companies, the social media companies, the big
Mm,
IT companies. It's in those IT companies' interests to soak up as much information as they possibly can. And most consumers, especially think of young people on social media, really probably don't think much about it at all. And young people think they're invincible anyway. And
mm,
are probably not caring what information gets soaked up in ways that might cause them concern or anxiety as they get a little bit older and have families and reflect on things going forward. So to me, it's absolutely vital for governments to put in place regimes that protect citizens. And the first important part of that is if you're going to actually deal with AI companies, you need to have folks in your government who actually have experience, right? One of the things that makes me very nervous, even in a government like the United States, where we have, at least now we're seeing some real challenges from President Trump in terms of getting rid of our civil servants and some of our top experts in the government, but we've got some phenomenal expertise in our governments. If you're going to have an effective regime protecting your consumers, you need to have people actually know AI technologies and can go head to head with some of the folks, cutting edge folks in the private sector along these lines. Another big challenge, and we have not solved this, there's been some international conferences, is how do we think about governments trying to work together across the space? Because a company like Google is involved in places all around the world. And, the United States might have a regime that's applicable in the United States. Europe might have a regime that's applicable in Europe. How do we think about harmonizing that? How do we think about having protections that happen all across the world? So it's challenging as it is to regulate and put in place guardrails within a particular country. It makes it even more challenging thinking about a regime that covers all the world's people, including and especially in a world where not all countries get along with each other. And thinking of even the US and China, we have a tough time cooperating on a whole lot these days. China may have a very different regime and comfort level with certain AI technologies than the US or other Western democracies. And how do we think about ideally a regime that protects people all around the world? So there's a lot of real challenges. Unfortunately, governments right now are not doing as much as they need to be doing, at least in my opinion, even in countries like the US as opposed to countries around the world to deal with and get ahead of these challenges on the AI front.
Yes, I agree with you on that. And I'll go to the next question so that we save more time. It says about the vast energy consumption by these AI data centers. What is the energy source that should come, like that will be proportional to the large consumption of energy by these data centers? And then how can we integrate renewables? And I want to also add to that because I know you mentioned about using solar, wind, and other renewables sources, but given the intermittency and how huge you have to build a solar panel to be able to cover up with the data consumption demanded by AI data centers. So how do we put that, how do we measure them and how do we compensate for the much more energy needs or demands from AI?
Yeah, I think there's both an opportunity here and a huge risk here. And I'll speak about it in the US context, just because that's the context I know the most in terms of how the dynamics and trends are playing out. The opportunity front is right now, by far, the cheapest way to quickly bring new electricity onto the grid is solar and storage. Wind as well, but really solar and storage. It's estimated that all our additional electricity increase in the US expected in 2025, 93% of that will be renewables and storage, just because the economics are that way and it's quicker to bring that on. Natural gas gets a lot of attention in our country in particular, but right now there's actually a backlog in the turbines that drive natural gas. And for a number of reasons, it's just not as quick to bring on as solar and storage. The storage piece, of course, is key, just as you mentioned, Shalom, so that you can deal with the intermittency issue, so that you can have power when it's dark. Even better if you have solar and wind and storage, so that you can balance across a variety of different renewable assets coming in and use your resources more efficiently. There's a lot of research going on right now, and some companies are figuring out that for some data centers and for some applications, you don't need 24/7 power going forward. If you have times of the day or times of the night where you have less electricity coming in, sometimes the most cost-effective solution is to run your data centers a little less at full capacity. So data centers themselves can be part of the smart demand response. Now, that doesn't work for some data center applications, but it surprisingly does work for some. And there's some interesting companies and business models trying to have data centers be more flexible going forward. As I mentioned at the outset, too, I think there's a huge opportunity for these big, deep-pocketed AI companies, who many of them have very aggressive decarbonization goals. Microsoft has a very aggressive decarbonization goal. Google has a very aggressive decarbonization goal. They can help partner with enhanced geothermal companies or fusion companies or others to reduce the costs and to scale up some of these emerging clean energy technologies that aren't at the same price points that solar is right now or other more cost-effective technologies. And so what we see is Google, for instance, has a deal right now with leading enhanced geothermal. Enhanced geothermal just means you drill deeper. So instead of doing it on a hot spot, you can basically do it anywhere. And it's 24/7 clean power because the earth is always warm and it just has that kind of more clean, firm power attribute. So Google has a deal with a company called Fervo, which is a leading company in the United States doing enhanced geothermal. And so, if Google, using its deep pockets, can de-risk that technology, reduce the cost of that technology, that could be a game changer, not just in the US, but geothermal is. I was just in Kenya not too long ago. Kenya has some phenomenal geothermal resources that are pretty cost efficient to be tapped into. You could envision that being a strong attribute in Kenya to be a data center hub, not only for the country, but for the region and for the continent, or even beyond that as well, in ways that could offer up some real economic opportunity going forward. So I think there's ways of working in partnership with these companies that have aggressive decarbonization goals to really reduce the costs and de-risk some of these clean energy technologies that would have could have really huge benefits, not just in AI, not just in data centers, but more broadly for all of us to have a wider range of clean energy technologies, including 24/7 clean energy sources.
Okay, that's I understand that. And the next question is really a question from young people, a young person here, and it's bringing like the role of young people in AI and energy efficiency. So the question is, what role can young engineers play in bridging the gap between global innovations with AI and local needs that is moving from the grassroots level up?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think there's a huge opportunity. My hope is that maybe twofold. One, that
Mhm,
young people who are interested in AI have an opportunity to really get a cutting edge education in AI. Right?
mhm,
I came from a lower middle class family in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. I had some opportunities in my young life to be exposed to educational opportunities, to go to my big state university where I had a
mhm,
chance to study engineering, among other things. And so we just need to have educational opportunities, including for people not just in wealthier parts of the world, but all parts of the world to have educational opportunities that allow them to understand the technology. Um, and then secondly, my hope is that those who do get a chance to learn about artificial intelligence and become on the cutting edge, that not all of those just go work in a big AI company on
mhm,
whatever profit maximization scheme that Google has or OpenAI has, et cetera. My hope is some of them start their own companies, become entrepreneurs, and take that AI experience to bring solutions to their communities, to their solutions, whether we talked earlier about energy access. Again, if we're going to have energy AI being used in the energy access space, we need folks who know AI and know what the energy access issues are and the challenges, and that's what drives their career. We also need those AI experts, including young AI experts, to work in government or to run for political office so that they can actually take that AI expertise and become the policymakers and the folks who design the regimes to make sure that we maximize the benefits for everybody from AI, but then also minimize the harms from it as well. And so we need a bigger pool, and we need folks to make decisions in their own careers that are going to be beneficial to society, not just beneficial to a few ultra wealthy companies.
I understand. As someone that is currently in at the University of Florida, I'm doing a bit of learning about artificial intelligence now and engineering. And I'm hoping that we'll be part of those that will go back, with our company and implement more grassroots solutions and drive AI at the grassroots level. So thank you so much for that. I think the other question now is about um, how might AI slow down the realization of the production of bioweapons. I think you've mentioned this. I think you mentioned about you explained how to reduce this risks. So I'll go to the next question about specific areas where we can use AI to improve demand response programs for energy access. And then the other question is about how can we, if there's a kind of regulations on how if AI refuses a prompt. And I think not just about shutting down electricity, there's also the risks on maybe taking a decision with self-driving cars. How can we provide some sort of regulations for these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a couple quick answers in the interest of time
Yeah.
here. Um, One, I think there's huge opportunity on the demand response side for AI, especially as we think about more of demand response, not just coming from a few big industrial users of electricity, but thinking of a whole range of consumers, especially if consumers have increasingly smart appliances, right? There's been some progress, but not nearly as much progress as certainly would be optimal to use our energy as efficiently as we possibly can. So if you have smart sensors in a building and you don't have electricity and lights on for even unoccupied rooms, but they can turn on and off or they can go up and down. When you use electricity for air conditioning or for heating through heat pumps, timing that when the demand or when the supply for electricity is high from solar and trying to be smart about when that takes place. Being smart about when EVs charge up. It doesn't have to be when there's better for it to be when there's more electricity than less electricity, especially if you have a period of time that you can charge your EV and you only need a couple hours to charge it up, maximize that. AI, because of the increase in complexity of a huge number of consumer devices distributed all across the grid, AI is positioned incredibly well to do that balancing and to do it in a very adaptable way across a variety of different jurisdictions. And we're starting to see some good benefits of that along those lines. And then there really is some opportunities. Self-driving vehicles, we've seen some progress. We have some cities in the country. I was out in Phoenix not too long ago in the United States, which has a whole bunch of Waymos driving around without a driver. A
Mhm.
lot of that technology is quite sophisticated, and AI can certainly help bring some efficiencies along those lines out there as well. But again, you need to have the consumer protections and other protections to make sure that that information isn't falling into the hands of folks who would use it for blackmail or for harm.
Sure, sure. That's it. Thank you so much. I don't know if you have 1 minute. I think this is the last question, and then we'll
Sure.
take the picture. Okay. This question is from one of my team members here at Renew Arts Technologies. He's Jonathan. He asked if AI can predict and prevent energy waste in industries.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where I think having those digital twins and AI technologies, looking at those digital twins, you can look at where you currently have inefficiencies and you can try a bunch of different fixes to see if they might reduce those inefficiencies. Some may work, some may not, some may be cost effective, some may not be cost effective. But if you can show in a digital twin that making this modest improvement saves you 3%, 5%, 10% on your electricity bill, it makes it a lot easier for those real world decision makers to say, yeah, let me do that, not just trusting, on some guess, but trusting on data that if the digital twin is a good model, is pretty accurate and quite predictive. So it just helps increase the confidence level of decision makers to make those efficiency improvements. If you can prove it, if you can show it with that digital twin. So I think there's a huge, huge opportunity there, again, across a whole wide variety of manufacturing applications.
Yes, I do agree about that. And thank you so much for the insightful presentation, the answers to all our questions. And we have reached the end of the May edition. And I want to say thank you again to Dr. Dave Turk for this amazing insight. To close off the section, please, can we turn on our video cameras just to have a quick photo with our distinguished guest? It's such a pleasure to be here. And please, while we're turning on our videos, please do not forget the survey in the chat box. We would really love to hear your feedback, your responses, and if you want something that we should discuss the next time, please provide to us and we can try to make that happen. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to take okay.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Shalom. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everybody
Oh,
taking some time.
thank you so much. It's really our pleasure. And I have a lot of people from the industry, early career professionals. I have my manager that I worked with in Nigeria here as well. He is also joining us in the call. So everyone is so excited to hear from you and learn. Thank you so much for having the time for us.
Thanks, everybody.
And I'm going to take the picture on the count of 3, Just give me some time to be able to flip to other slides when I take the first one. So one, two, and three. Okay, please a couple more pictures just because we have like 3 slides here. I'll be quick with it. Um, okay, do we have more people who want to turn their camera? So a final one. Thank you so much. 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was such a pleasure to have everyone. And thank you so much, Dr. Dave. We are so happy and honored to have you with us. Thank you so much.
My privilege. Good to see you all.
And please can they follow you on LinkedIn? Just to still
Yeah,
get
that's
more
great.
insight.
Yeah, feel free. And LinkedIn's where I do most of my social media stuff, so that's probably the best one.
Yeah.
All right,
And
thanks everybody.
thank you so much. And you can learn a lot from Dave on LinkedIn. I learned a lot from him. So thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to fill out the survey for us, and we look forward to seeing you in our June edition. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a pleasant day. Oh my God, I was saying thanks and my voice was muted the whole time. So sorry. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, team. Thank you so much, manager, for joining. Here's my manager, Dr. Onaro. He's here with us. Thank you so much for joining the section. Thank you so much, Renew Arts team. Thank you so much for being here and supporting us till end. And for all of us that have been joining since the beginning of Renew Education, thank you as well. Thank you, everyone. Please do not forget our survey. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, the survey will be sent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Trina. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Enoch. Thank you so much, Justina. Thank you so much, Rina. Thank you, Augustine. Thank you, Saeed. Thank you, Abdulaziz. Thank you, Sharon. I see you as well. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Justina. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you so much, manager. I hope you're having a great day. Right, I'll be closing out the section now, but it was such a pleasure to have everyone here. Thank you, everyone. And the recordings will be provided on YouTube. You can feel free to watch the section. Follow Dave for any more questions, and see you next time in our June edition. Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time. Bye. Thank you so much, Augustine. Greatly appreciate. I'll stay for a couple of minutes for people to still get the survey.